All right, so we are on video 6, I believe, and this is the last one. This is for chapter 7. Chapter 7, we are not going to, in lecture, be going over the bones. We'll talk about that a little bit, but we're not going to be going over the bones in here. You've studied that in lab and named the bones. I do still expect you to know um, general ideas about bones, but we're not going to be naming bones in lecture. So again, this is slides 36 through or 33 through 36. This is going to be covering the effects of steroids and vitamins and what it does to the skeletal system. Again, this is in McGraw-Hill, the PowerPoints that we have for class. So homeostasis, again, homeostasis is a term that you should know by now. The ability to keep a stable internal environment, so keeping stable bone tissue and healthy bone tissue. This is going to be done by constant remodeling. As we go through life, these two cells that we talked about earlier, osteoclasts and osteoblasts, are going to be doing this little dance where throughout your life, more in when you're younger and going through your growth spurt, it slows down as you age, but all throughout life, you're going to have this process of osteoclasts going into certain areas, tearing down bone, and osteoblasts coming in behind them and putting down new bone. In general, in most of the middle part of your life, you're going to replace close to 20% of your skeleton each year. So when it's really on its game, pretty much you've got a new skeleton every 5 to 8 years. You'll have almost a completely new skeleton. Now, what we're going to look at, the majority of this video is going to be looking at the effects of certain vitamins and hormones, mostly deficiencies when we look at them, and what it would do to the skeleton. Now, most of these have other things that they do in the body. Right now, we're only looking at what it would do to the skeletal system. Now, I'm going to start off with vitamin A because I'm going to look at it on its own. Vitamin A is like a conductor of an orchestra. Vitamin A organizes and gets the osteoblast and osteoclast to work together to make sure that whenever osteoclasts are breaking things down, osteoblasts are following up to build it. If I have a deficiency, bone development will slow down, if not become a problem where you're going to have malformed bones. Now, that is all I want you to know about vitamin A. So I'm going to kind of scribble through that. I want you to know that vitamin A is organizing and getting osteoblasts and osteoclasts to work together. But what I really want to concentrate as far as vitamins is vitamin D and vitamin C. And I want to go back and forth between these two. First of all, vitamin D is all about calcium absorption. And I hope that everybody in here kind of has already understood that. This is why, and I'm not going to get into about dietary stuff, but, a big thing is to drink milk to get calcium. Now, I'm not going to give my opinions on that or whatever, but just, that's the common thing. And they will add vitamin D to milk in order to help you absorb calcium. Vitamin D is essential for calcium absorption. So if I have a problem, if I have a deficiency in vitamin D, I'm not going to be able to absorb calcium. And that means there's going to be a lot of issues in my body. Now, as far as the skeleton goes, what's going to happen is it's going to cause a term, rickets, we call it. This is a disease called rickets. Vitamin D stops calcium absorption. All right, so I'm going to come back to that in a second. I want to look at vitamin C. Collagen is made through vitamin C. So if I have a vitamin C deficiency, I'm going to have a collagen deficiency. And now collagen's all over the body, but we're end up talking about bone. So collagen, if I have a deficiency in vitamin C, which in turn means a deficiency in collagen, I'm going to have slender, fragile bones. All right. This is called scurvy. And I'm probably spelling it wrong, and I can't, I'm just frustrated trying to use this little mouse to try and write with. But anyway, scurvy. And if you know anything about this area, I'm around Myrtle Beach, and this is known for pirate stuff. And one of the big things is scurvy. A scurvy dog means you're a pirate, because pirates had a problem with vitamin C deficiency. This is why it was really important for them to bring along citrus fruits. Now, vitamin D and calcium, vitamin C and collagen. All right. Now, earlier in a video, we talked about resiliency and rigidity. There is something called tensile strength. And tensile strength means something's ability to withstand a stress without breaking. Bones have an amazing tensile strength. They can bend without breaking. You can put a lot of pressure in for them before they break. And the best way to describe what tensile strength is the idea if I went out to a tree and I cut off a branch, and let's say it's just like a 1 inch branch, and I tried to break it, just cutting it off the tree, it would bend without breaking. And it might splinter just a little bit, but it's going to bend without breaking mainly. If I went out and found a 1 inch branch that had fallen off a tree 2 months ago and I picked it up, I could snap it pretty easy. Tensile strength is that what's in that fresh branch that I can bend without breaking. Now, that's what gives tensile strength is given by collagen. And so collagen, when I have a deficiency in collagen, my bones become fragile. They're shattering. So I can just, if I bump into something, I can break my femur, the longest and strongest bone in the body, if I have collagen deficiency, because I no longer have tensile strength. Now, calcium phosphate gives bone its rigidity, its hardness. And so if I have a deficiency in calcium, my bones become very rubbery. In rickets, if you see little videos of little kids in third world countries, and they've got those bow legs, the legs that really stick out, this is because they've got a vitamin D deficiency. They can't absorb calcium, so their bones become rubbery, and they don't have any rigidity to them. And so those two, I want you to know something about. Vitamin D is calcium absorption, which a deficiency is rickets. This causes bones to be rubbery because calcium gives bone its hardness. Vitamin C deficiency leads to a deficiency in collagen. Collagen, which gives bone its tensile strength. If I have a deficiency in collagen, I produce a very fragile bone that is easy to break, and we call that disease scurvy. I hope those make sense. Now we go to growth hormone. Usually it's human growth hormone. Most people hear of HGH. It's the same thing. Now, growth hormone is going to do something pretty important. It's going to make you want to grow. So I can have this. This is produced by the pituitary gland. All right, when you get into 211 and you get into the endocrine system, you'll see that. It's produced by the pituitary gland. And I can have two different things that can happen. I can either have it where I'm not making enough, or I'm making too much. Now, remember that when we're talking about this effect on our skeleton, there's a point in time where our skeleton can no longer grow lengthwise. This is going to become important in just a second. So if I have a problem with the growth hormone where I'm not producing enough, if it is when I'm a child, I have stunted growth, and we call that pituitary dwarfism. If, on the other hand, I have a deficiency after I've become an adult, it's not going to make me get shorter. So a deficiency, an insufficiency of growth hormone as an adult is going to have other issues, but as far as my skeleton goes, it's not going to affect me. If it happens as a child, we call it pituitary dwarfism. Now, excess growth hormone can have two different things, one as a child, one as an adult. If I have excess growth hormone as a child, we call that gigantism. You're just going to be big. You're going to be big all over. It's going to be pumping out this food for your bones, and your bones are just going to skyrocket. They're going to grow lengthwise. You're going to, Shaq is big. Shaq is just big all over. Now, if it happens after I am an adult, if it happens after the age of, we'll say 25, as the book says, but 22 is what I've been saying. If I have a pituitary gland issue and it starts releasing more hormone, but growth hormone, what's going to happen is my long bones can't grow anymore, but I can still grow certain things underneath the periosteum. I'll still be able to trigger those osteoblasts under the periosteum in some bones to grow, particularly flat bones and short bones. And so we call this disease arachnomegalia. And you'll have a big, your cranial bones will start increasing, so your forehead and whatever is going to increase more. Your mandible is going to increase. You'll have this big jaw, and your hands and your feet will become large and odd shaped, and that's where we get the word arachnomegalia. So growth hormone, if we look at an insufficiency as a child or as an adult, an excess as a child or an adult, the only one that won't have any effect is an insufficiency as an adult. If I have insufficiency as a child, it is pituitary dwarfism. Excess as a child, it's called gigantism. Excess as an adult is called arachnomegalia. Now, this thyroid hormone right here is not the one we talked about in a previous episode or previous video where we talked about calcitonin. This is a different one, and I'm not even, because of the calcitonin issue, I don't even want to bother you with this, right? But what I do want you to remember, calcitonin comes from the thyroid, and its partner, parathyroid hormone, comes from the parathyroid gland. I do want you to know calcitonin stimulates osteoblasts to build bone. Parathyroid hormone stimulates osteoclasts to break it down. Because you can remember, calcitonin puts calcium into bone. And then sex hormones, so estrogen and testosterone. Estrogen, the female, testosterone, the male sex hormone. This is going to promote bone growth. So again, when you get into the puberty stage of your life, your body's going to release an abundance of sex hormones at the same time increasing the growth hormone. So this is when you go through growth spurts, and this, this is going to help, get everything growing. But at the same time, it also, when we will have a trigger with the estrogen and testosterone, that will cause the epiphyseal plate to close down as well. So sex hormones, again, mainly going to be promoting growth of the bones, but also closing down the epiphyseal plates towards the end of the growth spurt. And then this one, the last one, is again one of what I feel is one of the most important. Physical stress, which just means I need to be putting weight on my skeleton. I need to be forcing some shock into it. Our bones grow on lines of stress, and we'll see that in a picture here. But if I was to, if anybody here that's listening to this has ever taken martial arts, one of the things about some of the martial arts is they'll have someone sit there and punch a really hard surface, not get a running start and punch it, but just like an inch, and just for a minute at a time, just boom, 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 boom. And every time that fist hits that wall, there's a shock wave that goes up through the metacarpals, carpals, and into the radius and ulna on up the arm. And every time that happens, our body is going to send a signal that's going to say, hey, these bones are important, put more calcium down. These bones are important, put more calcium down. This is why it is so important to stay active, especially for you women, because your body's far more predisposed to go through osteoporosis. And so you want to make sure that you do things to remind your body that these bones are important. And we call that physical stress. Walk a little, park farther out in the parking lot from the grocery store to walk in. I mean, just simple things like that will really add up. We all need to do it. I can tell you that I need to practice what I preach probably a little more often than I do, but we all need to do it, again, because our body functions on this use it or lose it basis. This is the picture of two femurs side by side, one between somebody who is a bodybuilder versus someone who is just normal. And you can see how when we put bones under stress, they're going to add bone to the area to make it stronger. But the next picture, I believe, shows a little better. Yeah, this is a cross section again of the femur. Now, I don't like the fact that, see, this way would be up, this would be down, but you can see how these fibers in general are going to run along, these fibers, I should call them correctly, these trabeculae in the spongy bone are going to run along lines of stress. They are basically scaffolding inside there. Our osteoblasts are going to say, all right, this is where the stress is coming. I'm going to lay this bone down in this direction to give it strength. So physical stress is a big deal. Again, on our space program, one of the biggest hurdles we have to cross is learning how to deal with a weightless or relatively weightless environment. So that is it for the skeletal system. Again, in lecture, we're not going to cover the bones. I do expect us to know certain things about the bones. I want you to know C1 is atlas, C2 is axis. I do want you to know there's 12 pair of ribs, seven true ribs, 5 false ribs. The bottom 2 are floating ribs. But just general ideas. I mean, things that won't be a big part of this test, but I do feel there are certain things that are fair game. You need to know, for instance, in the antebrachial region, the lower arm, that the radius is lateral, the ulna is medial. There are certain things that I do expect you to know, but this is not our lab practical. Lab practicals have their own special stuff that are on their own. So again, just trying to make sure that we're all on the same page. And I hope that makes sense, and I hope everybody's doing well. Take care and have a great day.